40 Days of Demolition is a smasher of the times, a real-life experience and detailed account of ZANU-PF's deplorable history of misgovernance of Zimbabwe surpassing over 4 decades. This story is about the effects of the so-called revolutionaries who continued with their misplaced liberation agenda decades well after having attained that freedom. This journal is about how activist cum liberation movement became an evil, dangerous and predatory cult, a systematic trend of failure to transform from being activists to civic organizations by the so-called African revolutionary or liberation movements. 40 Days of Demolishing is about how people can be so vicious and dangerous than wild animals in pursuit of control. It is about how people can be the most hazard to humanity in pursuance for power. This book is about the extent at which criminals can hide behind politics to plunder and murder with impunity. It is about how human misfits can conspire to make politics something it is not. It is about a group of terrorists in state administration. It is about the extent at which human beings can fracture their conscience in quest for dishonest gains. They do everything in the book of deception to glorify a lie, and they do everything in the laws of barbarism to condemn the truth. On that trajectory they murder, loot, and destroy. This indeed is the DNA of ZANU-PF, Destruction Boys, the real demolition team. The purpose of this literature is to present well-documented evidence of ZANU-PF misgovernance of Zimbabwe over the period of over 40 years leading to a demolished country it became. This exposition unmasks the real character of ZANU-PF, a cruel, inhuman, violent and savage organized criminal network disguising as a political party, a ruthless mafios cult. This gang is a evidence of existence of Africa's terroristic administrations and is also attestation that ZANU-PF is actually a crime against humanity. This anecdote is an account of events detailing how ZANU-PF plundered a functional economy to become sluggish one. Once branded breadbasket of Africa, ZANU-PF vandalized Zimbabwe's farming sector and in the process condemned Zimbabwe into a basket case. This discourse is about a group of barbarians obsessed in demolishing of every available development on site, gangsters who are so efficient in the business of delivering harm than good. This literature is also an attestation of the severe destructive potential drunkards pose given the opportunity. These gangsters have the capacity of doing the impossible, something a fantasy dreamer cannot conceive even for a fraction of a second. They can turn gold into sand, milk into water, honey into mud, oil into ashes, diamonds into charcoal and a Rolls-Royce into a wheelbarrow. ZANU-PF demonstrated this rich capacity of destruction by turning paved roads into gravel trenches, money into papers, home gardens into sewages, cities into villages, graduates and professionals into street vendors, productive farms into orphanages and industries into churches, as well as replace treated water networks in cities with rural boreholes. In narrating this story, I will present detailed timeline of events which includes brutality, corruption, murders, looting as well as blunt policies which ZANU-PF employed in demolition of Zimbabwe. These alone were the band of sanctions ZANU-PF imposed on Zimbabwe. The ransacked carcass Zimbabwe became is a testimony of how severe acts of barbarism demolished a beautiful flourishing country through a system of organized criminal networks in state administration. Though the region has had its fair share of drought seasons, but drought cannot be attributed to the cause of Zimbabwe's perennial hunger crisis. If Zimbabwe's famine was a result of drought, then South Africa, Zambia, Malawi and Mozambique amongst other southern African countries should also have been affected. Man-made famine is what ZANU-PF established for Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's wholesome meltdown cannot be blamed on just one person, that alone will be devious deception, and in this book I reveal the character of ZANU-PF, a ruthless organized criminal syndicate, a destruction team, precisely a gangsters club. Quite true. Robert Mugabe was the leader of the pack for the longest of the time, but we dare go the folly route of singling him out, Mugabe, as the reason or causer of Zimbabwe's destruction. Zimbabwe's demolition was a ZANU-PF collective action as a team, a Gukarahandi team. Gukarahandi translates to the early rain which washes away the chaff before the spring rains. In the same manner ZANU-PF administration executed Gukarahandi genocide in Matabeleland is the same way ZANU-PF unleashed the same Gukarahandi on Zimbabwe's economy. Just like a wild dog, ZANU-PF is not a one-man band, it is a system which operates as a team, hunts as a team and feasts as a team. It is for the same reason that no one in ZANU-PF can ever be prosecuted for graft or any form of dishonest, because plundering of Zimbabwe has always been collective resolutions and with consensus. The system of ZANU-PF makes sure that everyone within that gang is implicated in one way or the other, and everyone is an accomplice as much they are all protected. On that regard, no single individual belonging to that gang can be exonerated from the crimes of plundering the economy, and everyone in that gang is part of the destruction team that has been demolishing Zimbabwe for over 4 decades. Decisions to ransack Zimbabwe and conformance to ZANU-PF thuggery culture have always been unanimous and with consensus. Everyone in that gang subscribes to the madness, and those who disagreed either left the organization or were expelled. It happened to Ndabaningi Sithole in 1975, Edgar Tekera in 1989, then Dr. Simba Makoni in 2008. Whilst Dumiso Debengwa also left the club in 2008, Zikamai Mavhe and Kudikwash Bosikiti were expelled in 2015 amongst others. These were some of the prominent senior members of ZANU-PF who shared a different opinion with the rest, as they disagreed with the monomania of the gang. Take out one person or a group of people out of it, it does not change anything. What may only change may be the faces, but the system will remain intactly the same. Robert Mugabe was disposed together with a group of those senior members who were deemed as his loyalists. This did not change ZANU-PF culture of business. If anything else, the new faces actually escalated ZANU-PF thuggery and repressive behavior, and a kleptocracy state is what Dembudzo Mnangagwa established. Out went a moderate but predatory Mugabe, and in came a ruthless, vicious and corrupt Dembudzo. The only notable difference between the two is that Mugabe was calculative, yet Dembudzo set on the opposite. His only known skill is that of predatory brutality, a well-known genocide enforcer. If Robert Mugabe spent decades studying the dictator's manual, then Dembudzo proved to be the one implementing and enforcing it. ZANU-PF's lunatic collective system is the reason why they saw no reason for Mugabe to cling onto power, even though the man was visibly having problems with walking and speaking because of old age. The same history repeated itself with Dembudzo. ZANU-PF gangsters unanimously endorsed him to contest 2023 presidential election at the age of 80. Regrettably, soon after 2023 stolen elections, ZANU-PF thugs would not waste a second to campaign for Dembudzo's third term when he would be 85. Barbarism does not come less than this. I would want to bring to everyone's attention that in this discussion, when we talk of ZANU-PF, we are not just talking of the people we see in civilian garments, assuming such will be a case of severe misconception of this gang. ZANU-PF leadership is made up of two main components: civilian structures, ZANU, and military structure, ZANLA. The civilian structure does the administration, whilst the military guards ZANU-PF power monopoly. There is no ZANU-PF without ZANLA, and the modern-day ZANLA is made up of Central Intelligence Organization, the Zimbabwe Republic Police, and the Zimbabwe National Army. These I will refer them as the Ferret Squads moving forward. Disguising as national security agents, the Ferret Squads are the actual ZANU-PF power guards. Facts and history overwhelmingly support this notion. Over the past 40 years, the Ferret Squads have been protecting ZANU-PF whilst brutalizing all those who chose to have a different opinion from that of the gangsters. I also want to reveal that the November 2017 coup that was not a coup never delivered a new dawn to Zimbabwe, and there was never a new dispensation or second republic. This was nothing but a false story created to divert and deceive global politicking. What happened in Zimbabwe in 2017 is the same old story of ZANU-PF factional battles. This was nothing new, and it has always been happening since the formation of this cult in 1963. The same junta that has been plundering Zimbabwe since 1980 was the same junta which remained in power after November 2017. The junta is made up of men in suits who plays front disguising as civilians, whilst the men in camouflage being the power guards of this gangsters club. Notably, though abbreviation PF in ZANU-PF was meant to stand for Patriotic Front, the gangsters' rich history of plundering Zimbabwe whilst traumatizing its citizens contradicts this narrative. There is absolutely nothing patriotic with this club. ZANU-PF sits on the opposite of patriotism. It is from that context that in this discussion I decided to shift that narrative from Patriotic Front to playing front. The men in civilian garments ZANU plays front for the men in camouflage, ZANLA, hence the name ZANU-PF. The men in camouflage are custodians of supreme power of this club. The military is the real ZANU-PF. Take out the men in camouflage, then there is no ZANU-PF to talk about. It is for this reason that ZANU-PF will never reform, not even for a second. The gangsters' power strategy is a gun strategy, simply translated to violent force, hence this club has been clinging to power using force. The moment ZANU-PF reforms from its gun strategy is the moment ZANU-PF ceases to exist, and for that reason expecting ZANU-PF to reform is not different from one expecting elephants to fly or dogs to talk. The gangsters would never dare to reform themselves out of power.